Doctors of Reddit, what is the funniest thing you've heard someone say while under the effects of anesthesia? I feel like I got hit by a train. Guy actually got hit by a ducking train. After a really bad car accident, I was pinned in the car for an hour while they cut me out. Apparently, the EMT, who I knew from high school, asked how I felt. I said I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Also, in shock and very injured, insisted that I could climb out myself if everybody just backed up. Then, on the helicopter ride, I asked if we would have flying over a volcano and if I could look out the window. Pain makes me weird, I guess. I got my wisdom teeth out too. Had an IV, for the first time. I was 16 yo. All I remember was feeling great, I mean seriously amazing. When I sorta came to, I remember asking how much longer till it's over. And they said, we're done. The nurse brought me out to the car with my parents and helped me out to the car. And on the car ride home I asked why the nurse was so friendly. My parents told me that I confessed my love for short-haired brunettes and that she would be my wife because she was perfect and I loved her. Haha, I had no game at the time. While having dental work done under the influence of laughing gas, I, female, mid-teens at the time, tried very hard to flirt with the, also female, married, dentist. I was not in any way subtle. She was not at all amused. Awkward. Also, not anesthesia but dilaudid. I called my husband from the ER once rambling about how totally amazing it was that we have fingers. They're so helpful, and they're like, always there. They're like little friends that you get to carry around with you everywhere. It didn't take him too long to figure out they had me high as a kite, but he was super confused at first. As I was passing out to get my wisdom teeth done, the nurse who was putting me out said something about, you may feel an itching or burning in your genitals, please resist the urge to scratch it. And I answered with, no problem, you can take care of my genitals for me. And she answered with, maybe I should make it so you don't wake up. As my eyes closed, and that's the last thing I remembered. I'm sure the next hour or two was terrifying as I contemplated whether she'd healed me and if I deserved to die. I had a lump removed from my bob a few years ago. The table they had me on was shaped like a T, so my arms were outstretched. As I was passing out, I said to the nurses, I feel like Jesus. They had to tell me about it when I awoke. On the other side, when I got my tonsils removed, the doctor said we call this Jackson juice, as he hooked up the anesthesia to the IV, because this is what Michael Jackson healed himself with. I then woke up with no tonsils. I took care of an 11-year-old boy in the ER a little while back. I gave him ketamine for a fracture reduction, or in other words setting and splinting of a broken bone. As he was coming around he started with typical stream of consciousness babbling, and then he seemed to snap awake to say, I'm fucking live, I'm gonna do so many drugas when I get older, to the amusement of his parents. They thought it was funny and cute, but I'm pretty sure I created a monster. My boyfriend, as he was being wheeled into recovery, yelled to me, honey, you can call me Shrek from now on. He has no idea why he wanted me to call him Shrek. I had to have surgery a few months later, and when I had woken up, I called my boyfriend on the hospital phone and told him he could call me Fiona from now on. When I woke from having my wisdom teeth removed, I asked the nurse to take me to the beach and release me back into the ocean so I could be with my people. She kept refusing, so I started accusing her of fiddling with me whilst I was asleep. I ended up getting moved to a different recovery area, where I was then asked to be quiet because I thought I was listening to Nicki Minaj, but in fact it was just me slaughtering the lyrics to an imaginary beat. Not a doctor, but my dad had been given the goofy juice and was about to be wheeled into surgery. He looks at the anesthesiologist and asks, will the nurses have big titties? My mom and his mom were in the room, laughing hysterically. The anesthesiologist chuckled and said, okay, yeah, you're ready for surgery. Not a doctor, but my girlfriend broke her ankle pretty badly in April. I showed up in the ER shortly after she'd arrived and had to step out briefly so that the nurses could set the bones back. They had to give her something pretty intense for the pain, believe it was ketamine. I came back in after it was done, and hilarity ensued. She forgot repeatedly that she'd even broken her ankle. She constantly worried that she was swearing too much. There was a little boy in the next bed, which she was not. She thought that reality had broken and that there were 8 universes all at once. Edit, thus comment made it to a list on Knowable, D. Looks like I'm the only doctor who has responded to this so far. For general anesthesia and even conscious sedation, people don't usually say funny things. Most people's funny comment stories are from being on pain medications, which is analgesia, not anesthesia. I literally sedate people all the time and they just pass out. Now, people with hospital delirium, those stories are funny. Not a DDAR, but a roller derby girl who witnessed teammate break their leg. When the paramedics gave her the whistle of pain relief, she went from screaming in pain to saying, I hope that cute paramedic has to cut off my pants cause he might like what he sees. Made more hilarious by the fact she is married ECT. My mom has a sort of cute one. After a recent surgery, she woke up crying and asking for my dad. 31 years of marriage and still stupid in love with each other. After I got my teeth removed and woke up, I had an uncontrollable urge to drive. I had recently got my permit. I was like, let me drive, I want to go. My mom had to physically restrain me by putting her forearm against my throat against a wall. The nurse also had to help restrain me. I cooled down after like 5 minutes of this. We had the same family doctor for over 45 years. He actually delivered me, some 60 odd years ago. When I was a middle-aged man myself, during my very last checkup before he was to retire, he invited me into his private office, where he took half an hour to reminisce and laugh with me about a bunch of family stuff. He informed me that I had actually been one of his very first solo deliveries as a young attending, and that he had been a little nervous on my mom's behalf. He reminded me that by all indications, I was promised to be a rather tricky delivery. I was a week overdue. I was her first pregnancy. I was a pretty large baby, 9.5 pounds, that mom was a very tiny woman, and that she had already been in labor with me for more than 24 hours. He told me he had been about to suggest to mom that a cesarean might be in order, when I suddenly decided it was time to bust a move. Mom had had a funny reaction to her epidural, and between that and sheer exhaustion from her lengthy labor, the doc could tell that she was fading in and out of lucidity during my actual delivery, which took a while even after I had become motivated. And in addition to all the other complications, early in the process the doctor had also needed to digitally coax me into the perfect position to make my grand entrance. Lucid or not, mom certainly remembered that part of the procedure. Because according to the doctor, just after he'd cut my cord, and before she had fully come round again, my dishcloth limp, sweat-drenched, exhausted mother, normally a very gentle, unaggressive and soft-spoken woman, had suddenly grabbed him by his upper arm with a grip of steel, heaved herself halfway off the table, locked eyes with him from about 6 inches away, and yelled, "Did you at least take your shoes off before you walked in?" Then her eyes had rolled back in their sockets, and she'd flopped back onto the delivery table, out like a light for the next 10 minutes. Doc chuckled that the mat nurse had had to leave the delivery room for a bit at that point, because she'd peed herself a little, so he ended up washing me off and wrapping me up in a receiving blanket himself. To the end of her days, mom's steadfast claim was that she has absolutely no recollection of ever saying anything like that to him, and was horrified by the possibility that she had. Nonetheless, Doc told me that this was that incident that had made mom, and me, two of his very favorite patients. I recently had to have a tooth removed, and while under laughing gas, after however long of them scraping against my teeth, I declared that I knew how they came up with dubstep music. The nurse pulled out of my mouth and asked what I had said. I responded with, "You know dubstep music is right," and she laughed and nodded. Whoever made it must have made it after having a tooth pulled and hearing the wiki wiki boya. She literally had to stop working because she laughed so hard. I sang "You Are My Sunshine" at the top of my lungs while being wheeled into the recovery room after my knee surgery. My dad, along with my, now ex-husband, could hear me clear across the other end of the hallway, even through the snickers and giggles of the nurses. The surgeon still calls me Sunshine when we see each other around town. I recently had open heart surgery. When you wake up, they give you a heart-shaped pillow to hold onto and put pressure on your chest, which feels amazing. When I woke up, I threw the pillow at my mom and told her that whoever came up with that idea was the most ridiculous person, and screaming that no one wants something on their chest after it's been broken. That pillow ended up being my favorite thing, and I kept it with me 24/7 for a couple of weeks. Not a doctor, but my best friend broke his collarbone, and here is a list of the best things he said. We walk into the emergency room and he is saying hello to everyone, then he sees this nurse and blurts out, "Wow, you are very attractive." Anytime we were alone together, he would whisper, more of a yell than a whisper, to me about how much he wanted to duck this girl he had a crush on. Do you think lunch boxes are sad when they are empty? Sheet man, I'm so ducking horny. The ambulance driver was sitting right next to him when he said this. I love my grandmother so much, she is so lovely. Have you met her? Wow, she is great. He was talking to a nurse, not me. My friend's sister was slowly waking up after a surgery and was still a bit out of it from the meds. Her family came into the room and asked how she was feeling, and her response was, "I feel fine, but man, that nurse is a bitch," as the nurse was standing next to her. Luckily, the nurse was able to laugh about it with them. I was on a sheet ton of laughing gas and dilaudid after a nearly botched C-section with my youngest kid, and told the nurse she was a twat barnacle and gave the poor girl the finger. My mom said she laughed about it, but I guess I was mad and thought they were laughing at me. I was apparently angry because I couldn't have spaghetti right that second. My girlfriend after wisdom teeth removal. Do you think they call it sand because it's between the sea and the land? God love her, she was a riot the whole way home. Underwent a procedure that required sedation with ketamine. I screamed for half an hour in the post-op area. I scared the patients and fought off the staff, little 5-foot-tall me. When I stopped tripping, the staff told me that they had to use enough sedatives and dilaudid to take down a grown man 3 times my size. I had surgery for endometriosis. Sucked, but it is what it is. So there I am, just coming out of the anesthesia, and my hands are just going everywhere, like they have a mind of their own. I was rubbing my face and mumbling, and then I felt an itch by my pubic area. So naturally I tried to scratch it. I then realized that they shaved my pubes. I began crying and moaning about how my pubes were gone, that it was going to take forever to grow them back, and that I really missed them. At one point I believe I was sobbing that they needed to put them back on me. I'm really fun after surgeries and epidurals. Was getting tonsils removed, I think, and put under anesthesia. And the dentist was wearing one of those colorful shirts with butterflies on it. I apparently was super into those butterflies and poked her breasts the entire operation saying, "What pretty butterflies." Somehow, mom was semi-impressed. I do some weird shit under anesthesia. After having my wisdom teeth removed, I remember the nurse saying that I would remember that part. It became my only mission in life to remember that part. I really hate being told what I can and cannot do. After having my arm set after I broke it, they gave me ketamine. I actually really liked the process at first. My arm felt really warm and I was definitely tripping. I think my eyes were open the whole time and I was looking at the ceiling light. I told my wife that I loved her about 100 times, and then as I was processing what was going on, I started saying that everything was crunchy and mechanical. Last, after being put under for brain surgery, I woke up in a really hissed off mood. I do not remember this part. Anyway, I was hissed that the nurses wouldn't give me ice chips. I was really thirsty, my throat was dry, and these highly trained medical professionals had the audacity to not give me crunched ice. Finally, my time to shine. When I was 13, I was in ICU for a long time and was just coming out of a coma when this occurred. For reference, I was just about the shyest kid you'd ever meet. Obviously I don't remember this, but it's been confirmed by my mother and plenty of nurses that at one point, not long after waking up from my coma, I sat straight up, looked my nurse in the eye and said, "Hey you. I'm gonna duck your boyfriend later." Also should be noted I'm a les. Not a doctor, but recently had surgery because my ovary was in the wrong place, as well as a bunch of endometriosis. I barely remember going into the operating room because when they were prepping me they gave me something to calm down. As soon as I woke up I straight off asked to see my SO, they wouldn't let him in. So then whenever I saw a nurse I kept asking them to thank doctors for me. I just really wanted the doctors to know how much I appreciated their effort, and that seemed so darn important at the time. I got my wisdom teeth out when I was 21 and was terrified because I had never gone under before for anything. Friendly nurse puts the IV in and pretty much immediately I'm out. When I fully came to, I had a fuzzy memory of being wheeled out to my GFS car and I was told I had been Snapchatting in the office and in the car and sending photos of me posing while drugged out of my mind to all my friends. They got a good laugh out of it, haha. Bonus warm fuzzies. Me and my GF had broken up but were still friends, and she told me months earlier she would take care of me as I recovered. She kept her word, and for some reason while taking care of a bleeding, drugged out idiot, decided she wanted to be with me after all. It's been about 3.5 years now and I love her immensely. I had an abdominal surgery and as soon as I woke up the doctor was in showing me pictures of my insides and talking to me. As most of you know, the first time you wake up is not the only time. Every time I woke up I asked to see the pictures. Finally, at about the 8th time I asked my mom if the doctor had been in and she let me know she was counting how often I wanted to see them. Not very exciting, but just a constant, "Is it done? Let me see." After I had my wisdom teeth out I asked if I could paint butterflies on the mailbox. I don't know why. Had my gallbladder removed. Pre-surgery I'm a nervous wreck. I just could not stop talking. I explained, in detail, about how I'm bad with pain and will possibly need more pain meds as a result. However, acknowledged that I have no professional training and would trust their judgments. They'd given me something to prevent blood clots and something else. Turns out that something else was something to help me relax and it had turned me into a chatterbox. When I had 2 molars removed, the first one shattered or something, and a specialist had to be called in. I was high as a kite and he's introduced himself as Dr. Jesse whatever. I've internalized my "hello, pleasure to meet you" and verbalized "haha science bitch" instead of doing things the other way around. I also remember being really proud of myself for breathing, because I was told for over an hour, while high, that I was doing a good job of breathing. Patient with history of drug and alcohol abuse, heavily sedated on intensive care unit. This is the best ducking party I've ever been to. Obligatory, not a doctor, but a few years ago before my hip surgery, the nurses were wheeling me back to the OR when I remembered my purse was underneath the bed. They handed it off to my dad and I, while under whatever loopy meds they put in my IV prior to full sedation, made a joke about how the purse matched his outfit. One of the nurses made a reference to The Hangover, and I followed with, "It's not a purse, it's a satchel, Indiana Jones has one." They all started hysterically laughing, which of course set me off too. It's a joke I still would have made sober, but seemed funnier since I was high as a kite at the moment. I had a surgery a few months back and my mum said that when I was being wheeled to the recovery room I kept shouting marijuana is the spice of life at everyone. Had an operation on my nose. Woke up post-surgery high as a kite. As the nurse talked me into consciousness I proceeded to tell her how I am planning to propose to my boyfriend, the first I had heard of this. She kindly told me how sweet I was, at which point I began to hit on her by telling her how stunningly beautiful she was. I'm gay. I was in recovery after having surgery on my broken leg and ankle. I was coming to and heard my dad's voice and the nurse said, "Oh, about 5:30 p.m. he's coming around now," and my dad cracked a dad joke about my sleeping habits and how that's normal. Not skipping a beat I half yell from my bed, "Duck you dad." While giving him the finger, the nurses on the ward were all rolling in laughter saying that was the best wake up ever. I think I'm late to the part but I thought this was funny. Also not me saying anything but my actions were funny. When I went under for a belly button hernia repair surgery. The nurse couldn't get the IV for the anesthesia in my veins so they decided to use the mask on me. The nurse then told me not to breathe in once it started smelling bad. This then led to me freaking out once the anesthesia kicked in without whatever made it smell good. I kicked her in the bob I think and then passed out. Happy fucking birthday. A young 20-something woman who was in for breast surgery said this to me with a wink after learning from a scrub tech that it was, in fact, my birthday. This was as I was soaping up her breast for the procedure. She wasn't under the effects of anesthesia, but was definitely under the effects of benzos. In boot camp I had all 4 of my wisdom teeth pulled, shattered and picked out. I was awake, local anesthesia only, and I didn't feel a thing. But the pain medication they gave me had me doing shit like pretending to be Chancellor Palpatine. I would just say do it over and over. I'd switch it up sometimes with I can feel your anger, give in to the dark side. Because of the sore throat I sounded pretty spot on too. Fun times. Surgical dental assistant. I see people come out of anesthesia 10 times a day. Honestly most people bawl hysterically or a high confusion. These are about the only emotions they'll consider 100% legit. Usually, I think, as a result from the ketamine and propo. Or, they try to talk and it's a horrible mix of confusing gauze talk. Most often the first words are, "Was that it? Am I done?" Very rarely. We get a funny one that is usually holding hands with a wife or girlfriend and still flirting with the staff. Honestly, most people who have crazy stories I think, seem to have a placebo effect, I think, and they play it up pretty hard, knowing they are high. Very rarely do I buy the hilarious stories that happen out of anesthesia. But there are 10 odd news stories a day from the strange things people do. I guess just working with it's hard to buy into the drama all the time. I think the Drew Gus just removed the filters. It's rarely funny or pretty, usually pretty embarrassing for their family. With the disclaimer, my favorite story was a young teen and after getting wisdom teeth removed, was dead set on calling a boy she liked and asking him to marry her. We tried to stop her but she put him on and was declaring her undying love. Not that I think he understood much because her mouth was filled with gauze. Pretty funny to listen in. Second favorite story was a guy about 6'4", 250s. Decides he wants to walk around, gets himself up still attached to monitors and strapped to the chair. The second he stood up we rushed to catch him, realizing his size. Instead, we all at once backed up and he face planted to the ground. We couldn't even lift him off the floor so we got him a pillow and let him sleep it off. He woke up and we told him, and he was like, "Oh my bad. Sorry." Moral of the story: don't be an asshat and listen to your medical staff. This is secondhand, as I have no memory of any of it. I was out of surgery and doped up on God only knows what while, so I'm told, demanding that the doctor promise me he wouldn't go to law school because then we could be didn't go to law school buddies. I had been practicing for 2 years. Not me but my friend got knocked unconscious and hurt her neck so they gave her some pain medications. When they took her for a CT she was asking why and the nurse told her they had to take a picture of her brain and she asked if she should smile. I recently got surgery on my foot and while I was still high my mother recorded me saying things like, "Where's my ducking foot? Mom, the communists took my foot. Where's my foot? All I have is a snub. Those ducking communists took my foot and left me with a snub." I got hissed because they didn't have Coke but Dad Pepsi. Pepsi? Who the ducking hell drinks Pepsi? Duck Pepsi. Called the nurse Samantha, her name was Brittany, yelled at nobody named Susan, claimed to have 9 children. Apollo and Dante being my favorite 2, and Susan being my least favorite child who I have locked in the basement. We don't have a basement. Cried because I had to pee and sang a parody version of Set Me Free from the TV show The Get Down called Let Me Pee. Cried because I wanted ducking chicken nuggets. When asked how I was going to eat them because I was high I said something about ripping them up into pieces and putting them in a bowl of honey mustard then I'll eat it like soup.